one of the things that basically really rarely happens in real estate is a realtor working for a client never hears the words, "You're fired." What's that mean? When does that happen? It's the Real Estate Show. Welcome to the Real Estate Show. My name is Rick Naples. I'm the owner-broker of Zone Realty LLC. You zone your home, a real estate company here in Connecticut. You're fired. Have you ever heard those words? Have you ever been in a job situation, maybe when you were younger or even as an adult, where you've been fired? What does it mean when you're fired from a job? It usually means that the powers that be, the hiring person or company or whatever, feels that for one reason or another you violated the rules, or you weren't doing what you were hired to do. You weren't performing, in other words. And they've decided the best thing for everybody involved is for you to part company. Well, when you hire a realtor to do the job of listing your home or to work with you to help you buy a home or find a home to buy, what happens if that realtor isn't doing the job you expect them to do? Now let me back off a little bit here. First of all, when a realtor comes out and they sit with you, or if you go to their office and you sit with them, you go through an interview process. They ask you a bunch of questions, you ask them a bunch of questions, you get to know each other. And you basically decided to enter into the buyer representation agreement if they're going to be showing you houses, or the listing agreement if they're going to list and sell your houses, because you feel you've reached a common ground and you have confidence and trust that that person's going to accomplish the task at hand. Now, expectations have to be set. You hope that you find a realtor that you interview and that you talk to, and right from the very beginning, that realtor lays out exactly what they will do to accomplish the task that's at hand. They'll also tell you things they cannot do. And I'll tell you a little story a little bit later on about that. If you sign an agreement, you sign a representation agreement to hire that realtor, or you sign a listing agreement to hire the realtor or the agency to sell your home, and things just don't seem to be working out, what do? Can you get out of the contract? Can you literally say to the realtor, "I'm not satisfied, you're fired"? Yes, you can. However, if you remember way back in the real estate show, I did a whole series of shows on procedures for buying a house, selling a house, preparing to do a house, and all this kind of stuff. There's a procedure when it comes out of backing out of a signed contractual agreement. Now, this is where the brokers come into play. You hired a realtor. Realtor works for a brokerage or an agency, and perhaps the realtor is just not, like my mom used to say, a cup of tea for you. They're not living up to your expectations. Maybe they're not showing you homes that you want to see, or maybe they're taking you to homes that are nowhere near your budget or in the areas you want to look in. Perhaps they've listed your home for sale and they're just not getting a lot of showings, they're not getting a lot of activity, they're not doing anything that really shows you they're marketing your home to the buyers that are out there, and you've lost confidence and you want out of the contract. You want to hire someone else to do the job. Can you just blatantly say you're fired? Well, there is a little bit of a procedure that has to be done. You see, when you sign a buyer representation agreement with your agent or realtor, or you sign a listing agreement with that agent or realtor, those agreements belong to the firm that they are affiliated with. In other words, it belongs to the broker. And only the broker, the owner, the boss, has the ability to release somebody from the agreement. You can want to fire the realtor all day long and just absolutely refuse to work with them anymore, but you can't get out of the contract unless the broker agrees. Now, the brokers, as I said on a previous show, have taken extra education. They have more ability than the realtor or the real estate agent might. First thing they're going to want to do is they're going to want to talk to you. They're going to want to find out what the problem is. They're going to ask you questions. Why isn't this working out? Is there anything that we can do to make things better? Now, in a firm that has a number of realtors, the broker could offer you somebody else within their organization to represent you. And perhaps that's fine. Maybe you're having a personality conflict with the person that you're working with. And it has nothing to do with the procedures that are being followed or the agency that they're with. It's the individual. So you'd be happy to work with someone else. Maybe it's a situation where your expectations are just too high. You know, I say to a lot of my clients when we first start our relationships that I do the best that I possibly can. But I'm not a miracle worker. I can't change situations to be in their favor. It is what it is. You know, markets go up, they go down, they're busy, they're non-busy, it's buyer's markets, seller markets, a U market. There's all kinds of things that are involved. And even though the realtor may be super fantastic at their job and doing what they're going to do, there could be certain things that's out of their control. There could also, in any case of a firing, be two sides. Perhaps the realtor has done everything they're supposed to do. They've done the job. They've brought in the buyers. They've showed the house. They've found places for you as a buyer to look at. Listing homes. They've gotten it into a price that's very marketable, and people are coming to take a look at the house, and offers are coming in, and so on and so forth. They've done everything they have been contracted to do, but perhaps you, the seller or the buyer, still aren't satisfied. Maybe you're not happy with the offers that came in because you feel you can get more money and you want them to get you far over asking price. Maybe as a buyer, you're expecting to buy a home for a certain price that's well under the market value of that particular home, and the realtor failed to get the seller to drop the price to your expectations. There could be a number of problems on the other side as well as on the realtor side. But no matter what the problem is, the contract is a negotiation. You're hiring the individual to do a job, and they're going to do the best they can to do that job for you. But sometimes it doesn't work out. I'm going to tell you a little story here about my own personal experience. This goes back many, many years, and I've been in the business for a couple of decades now. But when I first started, I had listed a multi-family property. Now, you know what those are here in Connecticut. They used to call them walk-ups. You know, it's 3 floors. This was a 3-family property. It wasn't a side-by-side or a duplex or anything like that. This was a regular, old-fashioned walk-up, 3-family property. And the seller hired me to, one, sell the home, but also keep the home filled with tenants while it was for sale, because they felt that the house being marketed with tenants in place on a lease would attract an investor or a buyer more than if the house were empty. There's whole schools of thoughts of that, and I could do a whole show about that, but I won't get into those details. Well, during the course of the listing, one of the tenants moved, and the property was vacant on that particular floor, and the seller wanted me to find a tenant to fill that vacancy right away while the house was on the market. So, as their realtor, I not only represented the home for sale, but I also was willing to find a tenant for that particular space. It's amazing how sometimes, due to inexperience or situations, questions were not asked. And at the time, back many, many years ago, still learning about real estate, there were a few questions that I should have really asked the seller that I didn't go forth and ask. And now that we have a tenancy or a vacancy to fill, certain things started to come out that were just not agreeable to me. They had some pretty interesting views about what kind of tenant they wanted for the building, even though the building was up for sale. And their want was not necessarily the need, and it really skirted housing discriminatory rules. So I ended up getting fired. But I beat them to the punch. I basically went to the seller and said, I cannot find you a tenant within the guidelines that you're telling me, because that goes against the rules that I've pledged to, as well as Connecticut state law. So I think at this particular point, it's probably a good idea for me to be released from the agreement to lease or rent that particular unit. Now, of course, I could continue trying to market the home, but that situation also brought out some other prejudices that that particular seller had as to who they wanted to buy the house. And it just wasn't going to work out for me. I could not put my reputation or my honor or my obligation to follow the rules to continue on. So basically, I went to my broker, told him what the situation was, and at the time she was kind enough to agree with me that this is something we don't want to be involved with, there's too much risk here, and we let the seller out of the contract. He ended up trying to sell the property on his own. He actually did sell it to an investor, but he got thousands of dollars less than he would have got had he stuck with a professional real estate agency. So there's a unique situation of where the realtor was fired. But in this case, the realtor basically quit rather than being fired. There wasn't anything that could be worked out because of the way that it was trying to be structured. It just wasn't going to work for them. Firing a realtor is a very serious thing. Very few realtors are fired, but it does happen in the industry. You can get realtors that are out there that are motivated to just make sales. They work for a large franchise company. They have quotas they have to meet, just like any salesperson does. And they will do anything, even if it's skirting the rules, to get a property sold. Sometimes that puts their seller in a very high-risk situation. I'm not saying that the realtor does anything illegal, but they could skirt the rules a little bit. And by doing that, they may attract a buyer that later on, after the deal is closed, feels they were misrepresented or the property was misrepresented, and a lawsuit arises. You don't want that to happen. It starts from the very beginning. When you decide to get into the real estate market, whether you're an investor, a buyer, or a seller, if you're going to work with a realtor, you need to sit down and talk with them. You need to do like the banks call it, they say it's your due diligence. In other words, investigate. Who is this person that I'm going to work with? How long have they been in business? Are there any complaints against them? Maybe even talk to the broker and see if what the broker says about the individual. You know, sometimes realtors will not be the right fit for the property that the seller wants to sell. Now that's a mouthful. Let me explain that a little bit before I start getting realtors, my fellow realtors out there, all bent out of shape. If a realtor is trained and an expert and has expertise in residential sales, being defined as, homes, single-family homes, duplexes, multifamilies, condos, manufactured homes, things along that. That is their specialty. That's what they're trained to. But in Connecticut, when you have a real estate license, you can sell any real estate within the boundaries of the state that you're licensed in. So the realtor can sell a business, he can sell a commercial property or a manufacturing plant. There's a lot of things that are open. However, they must be trained and have the expertise to handle that kind of property or that kind of real estate. And that's why we have commercial realtors. These are people that are trained and certified in doing commercial properties. The residential agent cannot provide the level of expertise that the commercial agent can provide when it comes to selling the commercial property. And a lot of times residential agents will tell you that. I, again, in my career, had an opportunity where I had a family that owned a convenience store with a gas station, wanted to sell the place because they were planning to retire, and they asked me to list it, and I was happy to list the property. But it was a learning curve for me because I wasn't familiar with all the different things that you had to go through in order to sell a convenience store gas station combination. The financing was a challenge, and it was a learning curve for me. And I also had a situation early in my career where I actually had a friend of mine from years gone by approach me, and she had a school. And the school was a daycare facility. She had 85 or so students, and she was looking to get out of the business. She wanted to sell the school. So I ended up selling the school and getting involved selling it to a church, and the church was based in Europe coming into the United States. That was a nightmare putting together. That took several months to put that deal together. And it's because of that deal and the one I just previously described that in my early career helped me make the decision to just stick on the residential side and not try to do commercial. Why would a realtor not want to do commercial? Well, commercial sales take a long time. There's a lot that's involved in it. Sometimes the money that can be made, I'll be honest with you, is a lot more on a commercial sale than it would be on a residential sale. But again, unless the realtor has gone to school and learned how to market and handle a commercial property, it's best for the residential agent to stay away from it. Because what can happen is the residential agent may be trying to do something that they're not an expert in, and they have no idea how to do it, and they may hear those words, "You're fired." When you're interviewing a realtor, you're going to ask them basic questions. First of all, you want to find out what their expertise is. You know, how do they conduct their business? What are they offering you? A lot of realtors, when they meet with a seller that's looking to put their property on the market, they'll do what's called a listing presentation. And this is a standard format that all realtors use, which goes through the certain procedures on how the house is going to be marketed and what they're going to do. And they'll actually present an agreement. And the agreement will state in it what exactly the realtor's responsibilities are and what they will do. Right down to something as simple as getting the front door key and putting it on a lockbox on the front door. It will talk about posting a sign in the front yard with your permission. It will talk about, you know, brokers' tours and open houses and advertising and posting on websites. It will talk about virtual tours and how those are going to be done. Everything is spelled out in writing, so everyone has an understanding of what that realtor is going to do and how they're going to go about it. It's the same thing when you're hiring a realtor to help you buy a home. They have what's called a buyer representation agreement, which is required in our state that you must sign. You must hire the realtor so that that realtor can take you around and show you properties for sale. They cannot take you into another company's listing without that buyer representation signed. If you refuse to sign it, you're basically saying, I don't want to hire you, I'll go find somebody else. If you want to work with that realtor, you're going to have to sign that buyer representation agreement with them. So make sure you do your interview and you're comfortable with that person. Because once you hire the realtor, and you sign the buyer representation agreement, and you understand what that says and what their responsibilities are going to be to you and what your responsibilities are to them, that realtor can show you any property that fits within the guidelines of your affordability within the state of Connecticut. So maybe that realtor is a specialist in Harford County and that's where you're looking, but maybe you want to get out of Harford County and you want to go look in Towin County or maybe down in Fairfield County. You can stay with the same realtor if they're willing to travel with you to those different areas. I've been all over the state with clients, and I decided many years ago to kind of pull my reins in and stay within the Harford County area. So I very rarely venture outside of those counties because I wanted to specialize and really get to know the towns and the core part of this particular state. Realtors have the ability to also draw on the expertise of their broker and the fellow agents that are in their office or agency. Now, what happens if you happen to find a realtor that you want to work with? You've interviewed them, you're comfortable with them, you trust them, you want to put your confidence in them and work with them, but they're not part of a big franchise firm. They maybe work for a small little agency, or maybe they're a broker who works for themselves and doesn't have agents. You're going to make that call. Is bigger better? Is smaller better? That's going to be a call that you, as the client, are going to have to decide on. Now, that goes right down to, do you want to work with a realtor that's a family member because you're more trustful of a family member? Or do you want to work with a realtor that's a good friend? Do you want to work with a complete and total stranger because you want to be able to feel a little bit more secure about sharing personal information? That's a subject that I broach when I talk to buyers all the time. It's one of these things where it's not really the realtor's business about what your debts are and what your income is and where your credit level is. That's going to be handled by a mortgage or a loan company. They will ask you those questions, and those are the people you disclose that information to. The realtor's being hired to help you find a property that fits within those guidelines. They don't need to know what your specific finance or debt situation is because the mortgage officer is going to determine that, and they're going to develop a pre-qualification or pre-approval letter that lets the realtor know what shopping range you should be in. You can disclose the information if you feel very comfortable in talking to the realtor. Realtors have a fiduciary responsibility to their client. In other words, that anything you tell the realtor will go to them to their grave. Let me say that again. Anything that you tell the realtor, because of their fiduciary responsibilities under that contract, whether listing or buying, that will go to the grave. They can't, if the buyer confides in them about their finances and what they can afford and their debt level and this and that, and what they're willing to pay for a house, they can't tell the seller that. That's fiduciary responsibility to the buyer. They don't share that with the seller. If the seller says to the listing agent, we want this for the house, but we'll take this, that realtor representing that seller has fiduciary responsibility to that seller. They can't tell the buyer, oh, they'll go down as low as. They cannot do that. If they do that, they're in violation of their code. They're in violation of their licensing agreement. Broker's not going to be happy if he finds out that they do that either, because he's probably going to let them go. They're going to get fired. That's the other thing too, by the way. Realtors have to be licensed under a brokership. The broker is the boss, and if the broker feels the realtor is not playing by the rules or breaking codes, the broker's going to tell the realtor that it's time for you to go. And any contracts that realtor has entered into, because the broker owns those contracts, he's just going to assign them, or she's going to assign them to another realtor in that office. Fiduciary responsibility is the key here. If you feel your realtor's not doing the job, you need to talk to their broker and see if there's a remedy. Otherwise, by all means, say you're fired. My name is Rick Naples, and this is The Real Estate Show. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.
The Saybrook Fish House in Canton has been serving fresh seafood, chicken, and prime steaks for 40 years. Experience one of our 3 unique dining room settings, 2 with fireplaces, or relax in our cozy pub with a craft beer, wine by the glass, or specialty cocktail while enjoying a meal from our new lighter fare pub menu. Serving lunch and dinner Tuesday through Sunday. Reservations accepted for parties of 2 to 42. Gift cards always available. The Saybrook Fish House, nestled at the crossroads of routes 44, 202, and 179 in Canton.
When we think of an iconic New England town green, we think of the place where people got together and maybe heard some music, heard someone give a speech, maybe get an award. Times have changed, but the digital town green still brings all those stories, all those voices back to a central location. Nutmeg TV has been providing community television for over 30 years. We provide great facilities and training and equipment to allow anyone to come in and produce TV programming for the community.
Whether you're a college student looking to get into this industry or a senior citizen looking to learn a new skill set, we've made our equipment accessible to anybody.
Nutmeg TV is a family, and we embrace diversity, and we work with folks from all walks of life. And it's our job to make these studios available for anyone to use. We educate folks in how to do TV production, podcasting, etc., and so they can go on to other careers in the TV business. Nutmeg TV is really blessed to have a great group of folks who work here. We have a culture at Nutmeg TV that is set from the moment you walk in the door for positivity all day long. Each and every day, we are affecting the community in which we live. We needed some studio upgrades, and we were able to get a grant with the state of Connecticut, but we needed that extra bit of cash in order to get over the hump. As you know, technology is very costly, and we needed to do that. And Ion Bank believed in us. They believed in us, they believed in the project. They came down, they took a look at what we needed, and they said, you know what, we can help get you the rest of the way. As a result of Ion Bank's financial help, we've been able to help others move on in a field that's difficult to get experience in. It's very important when you're a business that works in the community and for the community that you're working with partners who understand who you are. And Ion Bank does that. They walk with us every day. Community is important, and Ion gets community, and they get Nutmeg TV. It's community banking at its best.